class, I'm going to tell you the secret of all investing. Now he said it slow. I sat back and put my hands down and I leaned back a little bit because I knew it was coming.
Right.
Buy low, sell high. I believe in using our time, our talents, and our treasures, not just to indulge ourselves, but for the benefit of others.
Welcome to another episode of GFR TV Spotlight. My name is Rado, and today I have the pleasure of stepping in to interview Frederick P. Baerenz, and I think I go by Fred.
Just
is
Fred.
That okay?
Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
Cool. Yeah, Fred is the president and CEO of AOG Wealth Management. So, for Fred, for the kids watching, can you please explain to us what wealth management or a wealth manager is?
Sure. So there are people that are financial advisors or brokers.
Right.
We're registered investment advisors, so we have a very high standard in fiduciary responsibility.
Okay.
Wealth management is more than just managing assets, though.
Okay.
We look at very strong financial planning as a foundation of what we do. And we not only look at the management of assets, but we also make sure clients have good trust in estate plans. So we connect with attorneys. We have great CPAs and tax lawyers, so we have some strategies for investment that help minimize tax payments legally, so that's always helpful. And then if there's insurance needs, we have an insurance agency, although that's not a huge part of our practice, but we check on all of it to make sure that everybody has the right amount of insurance, paying the right amount, if they need it at all. Right,
right. So yeah, in there you throw us in terms of fiduciary and all this stuff. So basically, I guess, in layman's term, it's managing a person's money then, right? Or just to simplify it.
And there's two channels, if you will. So many people are what are called brokers and work on a commission basis, and they have to make reasonable recommendations. But as a registered investment advisor, we're fiduciaries, and we have to make the best possible recommendation that we can consider. And so it's a higher standard of advice. Okay.
What can you tell us about what's the meaning of the acronym AOG?
Yeah, and, that's our doing business name. We're actually Alpha Omega Group Inc. And we picked that name for a couple reasons. Obviously, Alpha Omega is the first and last letter of the Greek alphabet. And so we have comprehensive wealth management and financial planning. We also multi-generational. And so right now, my very first client from 27 years ago, still my client, very privileged. College plans we set up not for their children, but for their grandchildren. 20 years ago are now being executed. They have 2 grandchildren in college and 2 in high school. And so it's also intergenerational. We have many clients that come in, some that bring their parents in, but many who bring in children and actually now grandchildren. Okay.
Oh, very cool. And is there an age, where someone can start basically, working with AOG?
Yeah, so we run an endowment style model, which is another part of Alpha Omega being very diversified and comprehensive. So while most people under, say, a $50 million portfolio only use stocks and bonds, and they really get beaten up this year, we have run an endowment style model for 22 years now. So we incorporate commercial real estate, private equity, private credit, some hedging strategies. It's much more diversified, and we've done very well this year with those strategies, as opposed to people using only stocks and bonds. Now, in the past, people had to be either accredited, meaning $1 million or more, or qualified, meaning $5 million or more. But with technology and innovation, we can actually bring on some of our clients' kids or grandkids at $5,000 or $10,000 and still help them. But most of our clients are accredited or qualified.
Okay, so I'm a 15-year-old in the club, and I'm watching this. I'm like, you know what? I want to get ahead, and I want to start. Like, can I just walk in or call AOG, or would I need, like my parents? Or say I'm 15 and I'd say, I have 5,000 sitting there. Yeah.
So you can't sign a contract, meaning an application for an investment, until you're 18. But we have a lot of clients that are bringing their mid-late teenage children in. We also strongly encourage giving back to the community, which is part of the reason we're talking today. And one of the passion projects of actually our youngest person, who was an all-state lacrosse player at Langley, graduated GW, has been with us right out of college. She is putting together modules for high school students. We don't know if we can do it for junior high, but to start teaching basic fundamentals of finance and investment in high school. And so we're beta testing it this summer, and we have 3 schools in the area that we're hoping to roll it out to next year.
Okay, so schools, I assume, schools most of these schools are 501c. Could the same apply to us as a club if you wanted to?
Let's see, so these are public schools. They're not charitable. 501c3 would be a charitable organization.
Right. Okay, but these are just public.
That's not helpful, or it's not really pertinent to that.
Right.
But what we're hoping to do is, actually when I was at William & Mary, the main street in Colonial Williamsburg is called Duke of Gloucester Street.
Okay.
Well, of course, students are not going to tolerate that much, so it's Dog Street.
Right.
Not any kind of, not mean disrespectful.
Right.
And so we actually had what's called Life After Dog Street. It was a class project of my senior class. Mm-hmm. So Life After Dog Street, we taught people how to look and negotiate a car loan. Okay. We taught them how to sign their first apartment lease. Okay. How to open up an IRA account. Right. And so even though we had very, very bright, students, fellow students at William & Mary, those were things that were not covered in any class, but the practical life application. And so we're going to try to do something a little bit similar, but geared more to the high school students. So we'd love to get, we've actually run a couple of programs in the past where, we call it boot camp, and we have them do a hypothetical portfolio and compare notes over 8 weeks of the summer. But we would actually be happy to help them with their parents' assistance to set up an actual account. And see what they can do.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, we'll make note of that. Try to follow up and see how that the testing's going, and then see how we can help our student athletes.
Well, financial literacy is so incredibly important, and frankly, one of our other initiatives is we're going to be involved with the NFL this year. Some of these fantastic athletes who have no training whatsoever in this. And sudden wealth, it's actually as bad as lottery winners. Most lottery winners, like more than 90%, 5 years after they win, are in worse shape. Because they get this sudden wealth, they make some bad decisions, they irritate most of their family and friends, and they don't pay their taxes, and so 5 years later they're in worse shape. That happens to a lot of the players, especially the NFL, on first contracts.
That's profound.
If they get to a second contract, they do well, but in that first contract, and frankly, their agents, some of them don't serve them very well because they encourage them to get in a lot of debt before the draft even. They'll loan them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, they get an injury or something like that, and they're in good shape, not in good shape. So financial literacy is important for everyone, but particularly those, and that's one of the things we emphasize with our clients is when they're ready, we'd like to do family meetings to bring the children into the estate plan, let them recognize what's going on, to the extent the client wants them to know about the numbers, but to better prepare them so that when they get this wealth, they handle it well.
Perfect. Yeah. That's very good. That's important. As a wealth manager, what do you consider to be the hardest part of your job?
So there's a topic that's gotten some attention. It's now included as a large part of the Certified Financial Plan, just like last month, of the curriculum. And it's called behavioral finance. So I had a professor in college, my senior year, head of the economics department, Dr. Matthews, and he very big man, 6'5", big bass voice. And our first day in class, it was a 400 level course. He said, "Class, I'm going to tell you the secret of all investing." Now he said it slower, North Carolina drawl. And so everybody, back then we had spiral notebooks, which none of your players would know about.
Anymore,
but they're all opening and they get their pen. And he was a fan of the choir and happened to be a soloist for the William & Mary Choir. And I saw the twinkle in his eye. And so I just sat back and put my hands down and I leaned back a little bit because I knew it was coming. "Class, the secret of all investing: buy low, sell high." Which everybody knows is true. And so many people don't do it. Why? Buying low implies buying something that's out of favor. It's scary. Selling high implies selling something that's done very, very well. And there's fear of missing out on the top, or greed. If I sell it now and it goes up, I'm going to be sad. And so even though everybody knows you're supposed to sell low or buy low and sell high, most people have a very hard time doing it. So as a financial advisor, particularly in these volatile times, now for our clients that have been here for a while, they very much understand this and know how we operate. But for our newer clients, the market being off almost 15% last month, bonds being down 10%, it's been a long time, more than 40 years, since stocks and bonds have been down this much together. And so for the standard portfolio, a lot of people are very worried. Our clients take it in stride because they know that we have a model built to handle this.
Okay. Very cool. Now, what would you consider to be the best part of your job, of being a wealth manager?
So we have a theme called the work optional lifestyle. And particularly for our clients that are working in technology, some of them working 60, 70 hours a week. And we have clients that when they take their kids on vacation, they get up at 5 a.m. so they can get 4 or 5 hours of work in before the kids wake up. So they're working very, very hard. And when we show them with their financial modeling that they have now achieved work optional, meaning that if they wanted to stop today, they could afford to be supported by their financial plan and their portfolio. I've sat across the table from dozens and dozens of clients when we present that summary to them, and Many of them keep on working after that.
Right.
But when they do it, they know, I'm doing this because I love what I do. It's important what I do. I have a passion for what I do, not because I have to economically.
Right.
And to watch the weight just roll off their shoulders,
right.
It's just such a privilege to be able to do that.
Right, yeah. And for those watching, just for clarification, work optional, I believe, is when you can almost like, you don't really, you have the option to want to retire, but you're not really retiring. You work because you want to, right? It's kind of like playing cop.
Well,
right?
honestly,
you have the option.
Some of our clients that have done very well very early in their
right.
careers, you know, someone might try to play golf 3 times a week or 5 times
right.
a week or something. They don't usually stay doing that.
Right.
So it's not that they necessarily disengage.
Right.
A few of our retirees, I just did a retirement party last night with somebody retired from government service after 38 years, and his friends were teasing him that every day is Saturday.
Right.
It doesn't matter what day of the week it is.
Right.
Most of our clients, even if they stop working for a paycheck, still have a passion and a vocation,
right.
whether it's volunteer or working at a level that's maybe a little bit below what they could do, but
right.
with less pressure. And so it just gives optionality to our clients. And again, that's a privilege to be able to present that.
Absolutely.
They do the hard work,
right.
but we help them organize it.
Right. It's absolutely. It's nice to have that option. Put yourself in a position where you can decide to do that.
It's a privilege. Yeah.
Now, this part, actually, let me read it so I don't screw it up. So we did hear that when the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, right, enacted FINRA Rule 1502, a letter you had written was the most cited by the SEC. Can you tell us a bit about that letter? And also along the way, can you, tell us what FINRA Rule 15,
sure.
02 is?
In the alternative space, for many years it was only available to brokers, and oftentimes had high fees and commissions associated with it. And frankly, that kept out some of the very best institutional managers that didn't want to be associated with that sort of fee structure.
Right.
So I was pressing on behalf of my clients beginning as early as 2012 or 13, and worked with some very talented people at FINRA, a former executive vice president and a vice president there, Tom Selman and Joe Price, to get them to force these companies to offer better investments, better results. Right. And so when they finally considered it, as the SEC was promulgating that rule, all the big law firms involved in securities and the major investment brokerage firms and all of them were sending in opinion letters. But I was, I think, the only registered investment advisor that sent in a letter and advocating for consumers. And I was basically prodding the SEC, saying they didn't go far enough. They should have made it better.
Right.
And so when they came out with the promulgation of the rule to FINRA, number 1502, it basically forced investment companies to do better reporting, more clarity, and it forced the investment companies to reduce their fees significantly, in some cases by 2/3, which made it a better performance for clients.
Right.
And so, as it happens, my letter was the most cited letter when the SEC promulgated that rule to FINRA. And I would say arguably that's been the most important new rule, particularly with regard to commercial real estate, private equity, private credit, of the last decade. And so I take a lot of pleasure that my advocacy on behalf of my clients, but in fact for all clients, all investors, have a better deal now, in part because of my advocacy.
Well, thank you very much for that, and I assume that also included transparency and all that stuff. It's all part of the whole framework.
Yep.
What was the craziest thing you've ever done in your career, if you can?
Well, I was thinking about that, and crazy experience. When we first opened our Great Falls office in the early 2000s, we had a lot of new people. We actually had people drop in, which is rare, but we had a lot of new referrals coming in. And so a woman came in one day for an appointment, and she wasn't on her schedule. And so I checked with the receptionist, and my wife was actually running our administrative team then. And so I thought, well, maybe we somehow got confused. So I took her to the conference room and began a conversation of, what are your goals and plans? How can I help you today? And she started buttoning her blouse. And at about the second button, I said, are you here for a financial service appointment? And she said, no, I'm here for my consultation for plastic surgery. And she was, I'm going to visit my relatives and family, I need to get this. I said, I'm sorry, that's the office across the hall. And my receptionist and my wife had seen, we had glass walls, thankfully, like here.
Right. I'm sure people are just standing there.
And she left there like, what in the world did you say to her? And so I explained, honest mistake. But
that's pretty funny.
That's pretty, yeah.
That's pretty fun. I'm sure if you have people standing, be like, no, don't stop, right? Keep going. That is a pretty cool story, I would say. What message do you have for young kids growing up these days, including your own kids? Obviously, I know your kids are older now, interested in your career path.
You know, I've always loved working with youth, and whether it was coaching basketball and soccer for my son or youth group at church,
Right.
I love to inspire kids to try to be better than you are, to seek excellence in what you do. And so to encourage them to have courage and to have excitement about their passions. I think when you just open up the world to them and give them opportunity,
Right.
I mean, that's just the greatest thing you can do for young people.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Now I'll jump into a little bit of personal, right? So obviously you're in the financial industry, you know, at what point growing up did you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, it's actually kind of funny because my dad was an Air Force officer, intelligence, but he always encouraged me on investments. I think he helped me buy my first stock at 16.
Right.
And so initially I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I went to Fort Keene Military Academy for high school, planning on going to the Air Force Academy. Right. And although I got an appointment, with my astigmatism, they didn't need pilots, corrective surgery. So they said, you're welcome to come, but forget about flight school. And I was, well, why would I do that? So then I thought, having lived overseas quite a bit, I thought, well, maybe being a diplomat. So I studied government history economics at William & Mary, thinking I'd be a diplomat. But when I was in grad school at UVA, I worked for a commercial real estate attorney. And so I got into private industry.
Right.
And then after, I did mostly commercial work, things like the expansion of Dulles Airport, the Dulles Greenway, a lot of the work for the Lerner family, Tyson's 1, 2, Spectrum Center, Dulles Town Center. And then after the savings and loan crisis, commercial real estate just stopped. So I started doing residential settlements, which was like watching paint dry. But two of the main firms I did it for were Smith Barney and Merrill Lynch. And so they teased me into the industry, and I've absolutely loved it ever since. So my dad, who I lost a couple years ago, got the last laugh because he always wanted me to go into finance, and I said, too boring, Dad, I'd never do that.
It's funny, along the same line, I have a couple of stories similar to that. I remember playing soccer, and I started having a lot of injuries, and my dad is like, yeah, but if soccer doesn't work out, you could just go into coaching. And I look, and I'm like, I'll never coach. I'm like, it's got to be the most boring thing. And in my mind, the reason was coaches, you can't control everything on the field, right? You know, I see the kids play, and you want to kind of pull their strings, but you can't. And that was the only reason I'm like, I could never be that guy. And lo and behold, I became a coach. And then the other part is talking about the eyesight. I grew up, part of me growing up was on an Army base. I spent about 4 years. My best friend's dad was like in the, one of those equivalent to what a SEAL is these
so
days.
Maybe an Army Ranger.
Yeah, so an Army Ranger. And I was in an Army base in Africa when I moved from Europe there. And that I just fell in love with anything military based, like service, right? So when I moved here, I remember I was a good soccer player, but I was hell bent on becoming. And then, obviously, I saw Top Gun. So I was hell bent on becoming.
The next movie is coming out next month.
Yeah. But I was hell bent on becoming a fighter pilot. So even though I was being looked at by colleges in college, in high school for soccer. I actually went and enlisted in the ROTC because that's what I wanted. Because then when I spoke to them, I'm like, but I'm also a soccer player. I want to play. And the guy's like, you can play soccer in the Army or Navy if you go in. I did my testing. My eyes failed me. Once I knew I couldn't. Once I knew I couldn't, I decided, I'm just going to go play soccer. So it's funny how things,
parallels,
work out. There's parallels. But so, the other thing, you're a part of the Tribe family.
Yes.
Right, and tell us a bit about your collegiate, your college years and College of William & Mary.
Yeah, I loved it. Unfortunately, I had a great guidance counselor because I insisted on going to the Air Force Academy, but he forced me to fill out an application, and I was a National Merit Scholar committed student, so I had 150 colleges, mailing me stuff, and I went on some college visits and had some
have those type
offers.
of options.
Well, and interestingly, I thought I was going to go to the University of Miami. My best friend got a full scholarship for tennis there. And we were going to go down, and we were in an all-male military school, so, beach, women.
Beach, Miami, sunshine,
So my dad mentioned that the presidential scholarship covered half of out-of-state tuition for Miami, and William & Mary was the same price, and it was here.
Right.
And so my guidance counselor, I applied the last day before the deadline, dashed off my essay, and it was the best thing that happened to me because William & Mary, it's a tough school academically. But I played sports, was involved in clubs, sang in the choir, and back then it was about 1,000 people in your class. So by the end of 4 years, you pretty much had a nodding acquaintance with everyone. And I always had, when I got to UVA, a lot of the undergrads there never saw a full professor. They were TAs mostly. And so I had full professors, I think, in every class I ever took. I think I had maybe a TA for a geology lab, but taught by a full professor.
Right.
So it was an intimate setting. It's a beautiful school, second oldest. Actually, the first university, because they had both philosophy and religion, ahead of Harvard. And
second oldest in the United States.
Second oldest college.
Oh, college.
Behind Harvard, but first oldest university.
Wow.
But it's just a beautiful setting, bright, talented people of many diverse backgrounds.
Right.
And I had a fabulous experience there.
Right. Oh, very good. Thanks for sharing that. Did you participate in any sports growing up?
Oh yeah.
And what sports?
So pretty much baseball, football, and basketball from like age 7 or 8, going forward. Right. And then when I got to college, I ran cross country my freshman year, but they wanted us to run like 100 miles a week.
Right.
And that was too much trying to do everything else. But played in real sports, softball, volleyball, basketball. And then once my son was born, I thought he was going to do something similar, but he started with soccer.
Okay.
And in Reston at that time, if you didn't play fall and spring, you weren't guaranteed a spot in the fall again on the same team. So instead of going to baseball in the spring like I thought he was going to, he said, "Dad, I want to stay with the team. I want to play soccer both seasons." And so I had dropped him off maybe the second or third week, and I only saw one coach, and I was kind of standing around on the sidelines figuring out what was going on. And he said, "Hey, my 2 assistants didn't show up today. Do you mind just helping move the kids through drills and things?" I said, "Sure, no problem." Well, then I met the other 2, and they were good guys, so I thought, "Okay, sure, I'll help you guys out." Well, then a couple weeks later, the head coach, his older son was playing travel. The younger son, we'd put him in the game, and he would sit down and pick grass. He just didn't want to be there. So after a few weeks, the head coach said, "Hey, if he's not going to play, I'm not going to coach."
Right.
But the 3 of us said, "Okay, we've got this." None of us have played soccer, but they're 5. And so in the spring, we thought, "Okay, we'll do this again." Well, one of the guys said, "Hey, my daughter's going to play baseball. I'll see you in the fall."
Right.
Then the other guy said, "Man, he was with, I think, MCI World, and he said, I've got to go to France every week. I'll try to make a few games."
Right.
So I called the commissioner and said, "I can't do this by myself." And again, a fantastic thing happened. A new player was moving in from Chantilly, and his parents were amazing. One had played for the national championship team at American in college. The other one was coaching the women's team at Woodson, which was a top 25 program.
Right.
And they had talked to the commission and said, "Look, we can't coach 5-year-olds, but we would love to mentor a coach." And so we worked together for, I think, the next 5 years, and just an incredible experience.
Right.
I think I love soccer more than the sports I played, because I appreciate the intricacy, and before a 1-0 game was complete boredom.
Right.
Now it's super exciting because I can see how it develops.
Right. No, that's very cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that experience. You told us about the craziest thing that happened in your career. What's the craziest thing you ever did growing up as a kid or teen? Yeah.
So my senior year of high school, I'd done a lot of activities, but I was kind of looking for something new. And a friend of mine would go home to Richmond on the weekends and go parachuting. And I thought to myself, okay, my dad's in the Air Force. Makes sense. He's in planes. Parachuting is going to be great. So I called him and said, "Hey, Dad, my friend wants to go take me home parachuting. We signed the parental permission." So I was only 17 when I graduated. And he said, "Are you crazy? Why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane?" I said, "Because it's fun." He said, "No." And I said, "Well, what if the school were to sponsor it?" And he said, "Well, we'll see." Now, back then, I thought, "We'll see" means I need more information, and we'll talk about it again. I did not know that was code for, "I don't want to talk about this anymore." The answer is no. So my dad at the time was on the battle staff for the White House in Air Force One, and he got sent to Spain. So a couple of weeks later, I had organized a club. We had 25 people signed up to do it. I got elected president of the club. And the last thing he said after "we'll see" was, "And don't talk to your mom about this," because he was afraid she'd be scared. So I called home, and I had to have the permission slip. And Mom said, "Your dad's in Spain with the president." And I said, "Well, did he talk to you about parachuting?" He said, "No." And I said, "Well, I talked to him," and he said, "We'll see." And he said, "Well, okay, I'll sign the form." So I went and I parachuted, and he got back, and he was furious with me. And I said, "Dad, you said we'll see." He said, "We'll see means no." So we actually got in, I think, 5 jumps. And what a fun thing to do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I guess from his perspective, when he has to jump out of the plane, it means it's an emergency. Right. So I guess, perfectly good plane. I hadn't
connected those dots.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Can you share one interesting fun fact about yourself?
Oh, goodness.
That, maybe most other people
don't know. I have a lot of hobbies, but right now I'm working about 60 hours a week, and so kind of pushing back. Some people know this, but I want to run one more marathon.
Okay.
I did a lot of distance running, primarily to play football, because I was only 145 pounds my senior year, and I was trying to move up to varsity.
Right.
But I fell in love with running.
Okay.
And so we live, 150 yards from the WNOD, so I've been running and biking, swimming, do some.
Yeah, I do some biking on there.
Yeah, but I want to do one more marathon. I probably shouldn't do that much distance, at 60, but I just want to do one more. Right. So I'm hoping to run the Marine Corps Marathon this October. Oh, okay. Again, I ran it in 2017.
Very cool. That means you probably should be starting training.
I have had a couple of physical injuries that have pushed back my schedule a little bit. So if I can't get training going intensely in June, I may have to defer for one more year. But I'd like to do one more. So I'm hoping I can catch up my training a little bit.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a worthy cause. I understand you love pets, particularly dogs, right?
Yes.
Is it all pets? I know you love dog, and I've heard about your dog Zeke.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Zeke?
Yeah, so Zeke's actually our third golden retriever. We've had goldens for decades now. Okay. And they're just such great dogs. I had a German Shepherd growing up that I loved, but we really liked the golden retriever. And so our previous dog, Jethro, when my wife and I were both working full-time, basically we raised him at our office in Great Falls. Okay. And where we had our office, it was very easy to keep him in and walk him around. Right. Zeke's 3, and he's still a little immature, so he only gets to visit the office now. He doesn't get to stay with me during the day. But he's great, and I love taking him, for runs on the weekends and things like that. So
apparently, there's some interesting stories about Zeke being acting as a prospective client in the office. And I never really asked what that meant. Like, do some of your people have to pitch to Zeke, or do they have to? So what was that whole thing about?
Yeah. So we have a firm in New York. I probably shouldn't name them, but they have a couple of different investments with. They were breaking in a new representative. So the representative we've been using out of New York set his colleague up, and so he told them that Zeke Baerenz was the key advisor to get to. So if he could come in here and convince Zeke to do a new investment, all the other advisors would adopt it. And I don't know if they filmed him, but maybe they had him on conference call. So he came in, very seriously asked for Zeke Baerenz. The receptionist said,
person.
Hold on just a second, I'll bring him into the conference room. So he went and sat in the conference room, and then Zeke trotted in and put his hands up on the table, and the look on his face was just
that's pretty funny story. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And somehow he got into the dadatabase of some firms, so occasionally we still get calls for the advisor Zeke Baerenz, and we always get a laugh out of that.
Very popular. Hopefully he's getting his commission and doing well, right?
No commission. As a financial advisor, we only do advisory fees. So,
you're right.
We did, I was kind of frustrating. I used to write a monthly news article. I'll probably start doing it again, but we would feature the pets of the house, because almost everybody here has pets, some cats, some dogs. Right. And my wife would write the article, and it would feature pictures of the pets, sitting around the office, looking at files, perhaps. And that always got the most clicks of all the newsletter articles, so I was pretty frustrated with that. But
could imagine that would be pretty cool. Like one of the, was that famous art with the dogs playing poker, right? Like you set them up around the table. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, we did
looking at financial.
We brought them in on different days. We didn't think we could get them all at the same time, and it would be
it would probably cause ruckus.
Good cross pollination. So
cool. No, I want to jump into your family a little bit. So tell us a bit about your family. I know you've mentioned bits and pieces about so tell us about
married, my wife Sheila, and we have a son Joe who's 32. He went to Virginia Tech undergrad, Thomas Jefferson High School for high school. Worked in New York for a couple of years for financial firms, but decided he wanted to go a little bit different route. So he came back and went to law school at the University of Virginia. And then was actually, this is pure chance, but he was working for a group of 7 attorneys at the SEC before his third year law school on FINRA 1502 issues, looking at pricing on real estate projects, because he knew a lot about it. And at the end of the summer, they said, hey, you're a smart kid, you went to TJ, explain cryptocurrency to us. So he wrote a brief paper, not to publish, but they had sent a copy back to the law school. And this was at a time that the Winklevoss twins of Facebook fame were putting together a Gemini Trust Company, and they were scouring the country for attorneys that had any involvement with crypto whatsoever. And so he has been working in compliance with cryptocurrency for all 5 years since he graduated law school. He's now here working for a DC-based firm called Chainalysis. But this week he's actually in New York headlining a conference. He's only 32.
Wow.
But he has combined his knowledge of investments, his legal knowledge and compliance, his technology background with TJ into the perfect merge for he's very passionate about his work, and he's uncovering some bad people doing bad things with crypto and trying to make it a safer venue.
Oh, very cool. I'm sure you're a proud dad, with his correct 32, that's very young. And to be,
he actually briefed some very, very senior people at the Pentagon regarding stopping Putin and Russia from using crypto to work around sanctions.
Right.
And now he's working primarily with major financial institutions for safety and compliance on cryptocurrency. So couldn't be prouder. And so I'm just happy for him because he's found something he's really good at that he enjoys.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. What did you mean?
Still not investing in any cryptocurrency here.
Right.
Blockchain technology, yes. Crypto, still don't know.
Probably come down the line in the future once everything is.
I don't know how to value it. Until we can value it.
That's tough.
The Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. I mean, the companies that are using blockchain technology, we can value them. So it's a close parallel. But we haven't crossed over yet to anything. With
and when did you meet Sheila?
We met at McLean Bible Church,
and
we're just friends. And then within a month, she was actually interviewing with me to perhaps be a financial advisor. And then within a month, we realized we had a different agenda. And so, very happily married. And
that's cool. Yeah. Congratulations for So finally, I know you're a busy man, so I'll end with this. I understand you're heavily involved in the community, right? Can you tell us a bit about your community work and also, most importantly, what drives you every day? Outside of your work and all that, people have those things that gets you waking up, and maybe it could be work, but there's people have certain passions, and what is that?
Well, it's interesting. At McLean Bible, I took a Bible course on finance, and I thought to myself initially, I had been a youth director at Williamsburg Baptist in in college, and I went to seminary for a year between college and grad school. So I thought, what can these Christians know about finance? I mean, the church people I knew were wonderful, but finance wasn't like right down the middle of their skill set. And I took it and it changed my life. My mentor, Frank Streety, had been president of McLean Bank. There's about, the Bible mentions love about 500 times, faith about 500 times. It mentions finance like almost 4,000 times. And so in terms of that, I believe in using our time, our talents, and our treasures, not just to indulge ourselves, but for the benefit of others. So I've been blessed to be successful financially. I help a lot of other people be successful financially. But the real joy comes in translating that to help others. So you mentioned being from Ghana originally. I've been working in Kenya for more than 10 years. We've helped a very, very talented couple over there build a school, 2 churches, a medical clinic, and they're working very strongly to develop community leadership now. Here I work with a couple different charities. I have an eye condition that for most people my age, they're blind. It's called retinitis pigmentosus. I'm a poster child, so I still have a lot of vision. But I've been working with the Foundation Fighting Blindness for 17 years. I just chaired the DC Walk, and I'm going to do it again next year. I work closely with Jill's House, which is helping.
Yes, down right off Route 7, right?
But spring out of McLean Bible Church, it provides respite care for the parents of severely disabled children, irrespective of faith or ethnic background or economic background. It just the divorce rate in among parents of severely disabled kids is more than 90%. So it's an impossible job for 2, then goes to 1. So if we can give them a little bit of respite. I had a brother that was Down syndrome, and I lost him when he was 10 and I was 7. And so I honor my brother and my mom by supporting that charity, and I have a passion as well. But I think about them a lot. My mom could have used some help when my dad was overseas, with my brother.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. Thanks so much for sharing your life and your day with us. Again, I know you're a busy person, so we definitely appreciate it.
Well, Rado, thank you for what you're doing. I had such great joy coaching, mostly soccer, a little bit of basketball with my son, kindergarten through 8th grade. And I think that sports are so important for a well-rounded upbringing. One of the things we look for in new employees is do they have sports in their background, because I think it promotes leadership, hard work, discipline, and it's a perfect complement to faith and to academic work to have a really well-rounded person. So you're right in the center of the dot in helping these young men and women, young girls and boys, to grow up having a really important component with soccer, or should I say,
Football.
Football. Not American
Right.
football, just football.
Right,
And
absolutely.
you're doing fantastic work with what you're doing. So we're happy to sponsor this series and
Absolutely.
and support it financially.
And as a club, we definitely appreciate, your sponsorship of, and, helping contribute to this and, definitely, like I said, definitely appreciate it.
Well,
So
we've actually
thank
had
you
a
again.
couple of our summer interns. We usually want people that are rising juniors or seniors in
Okay,
college
right.
in finance or economics.
Right.
And so we've had a couple of our interns that have come through the Reston and
Right,
Great
right,
Falls
right.
soccer programs.
Right.
And again, we like to have people with some athletics in the background
Right.
as well as strong
Right.
academics.
Right.
But it just promotes a well-rounded person, again, with great work ethic
Right.
and energy and knowing how to compete.
Right.
And the work you're doing is definitely preparing these young people
Yeah.
for future success.
Yeah, we enjoy it, we take it serious, and again, being a part of their life, hopefully we're able to influence it positively. So, like I said, thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. Again, I'm Rado. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our page, and feel free to tag someone in the comment box, and so that you can tag someone who you think we should interview next. Thank you.